After having this 2025 Toyota Tundra for 6 months now, there are some things I really like and a few things that I had to fix. I did have a second generation Tundra Platinum with a V8 and had that for about 5 years, and that was an excellent truck, so it's been interesting owning this new generation with the twin turbo V6. Let's start with what this truck does really well, and then we'll get into the areas where it falls short. When it comes to drivability, this truck feels really good on the road. I've driven just about every new full-size truck out there, and honestly, the Tundra is one of the best when it comes to handling. It makes sense since it is the newest redesign in the group. It's really easy to steer around corners and maneuver around parking lots, and there's barely any body roll or brake dive, which just makes driving easier and the ride for passengers is more comfortable. The ride quality itself is great too, partly because it has rear coil springs instead of leaf springs. This one doesn't have the adaptive variable suspension, or AVS, which is helpful if you do a lot of heavy towing because it will keep the truck from squatting, but it can make the ride pretty stiff and rough for everyday driving. Performance from the twin-turbo V6 is honestly impressive. This one is a non-hybrid version, which I went with because the trade-offs of the iForce Max didn't really feel worth it due to quite a few reasons. In either setup, the Tundra isn't the quickest full-size truck off the line in a 0 to 60 sprint, but thanks to its torque curve, it feels really strong and responsive around town, and especially when towing. With peak torque hitting at just 2400 RPM, that's way lower than any V8 out there, and even lower than the 3000 RPM peak torque in the F-150 EcoBoost in the standard and high output versions of the Ram Hurricane, which don't hit max torque until 3500 RPM. The Hurricane HO is definitely fast from a dead stop, but honestly, I found the Tundra more enjoyable for everyday driving. Those other trucks have plenty of power, but you really have to rev them out to feel it. The Tundra delivers its power lower in the rev range, which makes it more responsive in normal conditions. It's not quite as smooth as a V8 at idle, but no V6 is. Shifts are incredibly smooth with the 10-speed transmission. It keeps the engine at a nice, relaxed RPM when cruising on the highway. At 70 or 75, you're sitting well below 2000 RPM. What's nice is that it doesn't constantly hunt for gears. If you need a little extra power going up a hill or passing someone, the turbos kick in without needing to downshift. Shifts are quick and the smoothness easily rivals any luxury car. The transmission is built by Aisin, which is the same company that's been making transmissions for Toyota vehicles for years, and they've got a strong track record for reliability with very few issues, even for people who do nothing but tow and never change the transmission fluid. Towing is really nice with this setup. With the amount of torque it has, combined with the 10-speed, it effortlessly keeps up with stop-and-go traffic and has no trouble at all maintaining highway speeds with a heavy load. With some vehicles, you really get fatigued after towing a trailer for a little while, like you're holding your breath the whole time. It just feels like you're really working the vehicle, and every move is a struggle. But this isn't the case at all with this setup. You'll almost never need to push past 3000 RPM. The engine is working, but you wouldn't know it. It stays quiet, and it always feels like there's plenty of power left, even when towing something heavy. You're not gripping the wheel tight or stressing out if you need to speed up. It just feels powerful, quiet, and easy. All you have to do is look at the torque figures and how they look very similar to a diesel, and it all makes sense. The panoramic view monitor makes it so much easier to navigate through tight parking lots, and parking perfectly is extremely easy. No wondering if you're in the middle of the spot or if you're sticking out too far. And if you're prone to running over curbs, it's much easier to avoid them because you can set the cameras to automatically come on at 10 miles an hour or less. Plus, it's nice how the camera views are set up so you get a really large, clear picture on the screen. The screen is responsive and easy to use, unlike some that are laggy and slow. Things like the adaptive cruise control work well and reliably, which isn't always the case in different cars. The digital rearview mirror has frozen on me a couple of times, and the infotainment screen has done the same. Both went back to working normally after a quick restart. Gas mileage is actually pretty decent and in line with EPA estimates. When I'm driving mostly around town with stop-and-go traffic and no highway time, I usually get around 18 miles per gallon on a full tank. On days when I do a lot of highway driving and stay below 75, I've seen it climb as high as 24 miles per gallon, not just going downhill, but as an average, which is really good. Overall, with a typical mix of highway cruising and city driving, I'm averaging about 21 or 22 miles per gallon. I'm sure a big part of that efficiency comes from the 10-speed transmission, which helps keep the engine at optimal RPM, especially on the highway. I'd expect those numbers to be much lower in winter weather. The engine sound enhancement, which comes with all Tundras equipped with the JBL stereo, which pumps in amplified engine noise, actually sounded pretty good at first, but I did end up turning it off. The interior is so quiet that the extra noise just didn't feel necessary. Honestly, it was a bit too loud, and since it's not a V8, there's no need to make it sound like one. With the enhancement off, you can hear the turbo whistle more clearly, which sounds great on its own. And the V6 does have a bit of a growl to it, not like a V8, but it sounds pretty good for a V6. If you want to change this and some other settings, you can use a Carista, which you can buy on Amazon, that plugs into the OBD2 port and connects to an app. It does require a subscription to access some features, but you don't have to keep it active all the time. I'll put a link to it in the comments if you're interested. The interior has a really nice, modern feel to it with mostly high-quality materials. The perforated leather on the Platinum is super soft, and there are a lot of soft-touch materials throughout the cabin, more than you get with the Limited. The seats themselves are a bit on the firm side, even though they do use a softer foam than the lower trim levels, and the bottom cushion should angle up a little bit more to give better thigh support, but higher trims have an extendable thigh support, which does help with that. The massaging seat feature might sound a little gimmicky, but on long drives, it actually does make a difference. After a few hours on the road, it does help relieve some of the pressure. The driving position is also very comfortable, with a good range of height adjustment, and the tilt and telescoping steering wheel makes it easy to dial everything in just right. If you're only here for the positives and don't want to hear any criticism, you might want to stop watching now. But if you're thinking about buying one, it's worth hearing both the pros and the cons. I'm not here to tell you whether the downsides are deal breakers, that's up to you. I'm just laying them out so you know the good and the bad. Unfortunately, I have had some issues with the interior when it comes to squeaks and rattles. After a few weeks, there was an overwhelming amount of noises, nothing overly loud, but a bunch of subtle ones. Most vehicles, you'll get a noise here and there, which is understandable, but this was more than I'm used to. A lot of people have complained about rattles and wind noise with these Tundras, mostly the 2022 and 2023. Thankfully, there are no problems with the windows that were common before, but I bought some foam, felt tape, and double-sided tape from Amazon to take care of any rattles, and I've lost count of how many I've fixed, but I think it's up to about 10 or 12. One of the creaking sounds was coming from the headliner, which I found out has a faulty glue that doesn't hold properly. Because of that, the glued areas shift slightly and creak every time the truck hits a bump. It should be covered under warranty, but fixing it is a pretty big job, and honestly, I'd be worried they might mess something else up in the interior while taking it apart. So instead, I just slid some padding in to keep it from moving, and that actually stopped the noise completely. The upper part of the driver's seat back would creak whenever I stopped or accelerated. At first, it was barely noticeable, but over time it got progressively worse. Eventually, I took it in specifically to get that issue looked at. After a little pushback from the dealer, I pointed out exactly where the noise was coming from, told them there should be a TSB, and they were able to order the parts and take care of it. If they were left to figure it out on their own, there's a really good chance it would have fallen into the usual could not duplicate pile. Funny enough, this seems to be a pretty common issue with the previous generation Tundras too. Many of them seem to have the same creak. The window gaskets are pretty loose, which results in noises when driving. There's nothing really holding them on, and the fitment is pretty weak, so they would creak over anything larger than a small bump at the road. I did mention the problem to the dealer, and they said that there's nothing that could be done, even though I'm sure they have the materials. I tried fixing them with various double-sided tapes, but it turned out felt tape was a better solution. With felt tape, I've been able to get rid of about 95% of the creaking. The center console was very squeaky anytime you'd put any weight on the armrest or go around a corner, but the fix was pretty straightforward. I took some felt tape and put it on the sides of the inside of the console, and that made a huge difference. Toyota actually did have some felt tape in there, probably in response to this complaint over the past few years, but it wore through after just a couple of weeks, and you could tell that it was just an afterthought. There were quite a few other minor creaks and rattles, but I managed to quiet most of them down using some foam and felt tape. Now, the interior is really quiet. There's just one small rattle left coming from inside the driver's door that I haven't been able to track down yet, despite removing the entire door panel. At this point, the interior is very quiet, but honestly, I can see how some of these noises would drive someone crazy if you weren't comfortable fixing them on your own. There's no way a dealership would go through the effort to chase down every little sound like that. If Toyota would just use more insulating foam for the interior pieces like they do with higher-end cars, the interior would be excellent. Spots like where the speaker grille meets the door panel, in between the AC vent trim and the ductwork itself, or anywhere there's plastic on plastic, should have some sort of material to reduce rubbing and vibration. The foam and felt that they should be adding are so cheap that it just doesn't make sense why they don't use them, and instead would rather produce a noisy interior. I'm not sure how many other truck brands have squeaky interiors, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a common issue across the board. I'll leave links to the materials I used in the comments. Fortunately, most of the rattles and noises can be fixed with a little bit of patience and diagnostics. Creaks and rattles aside, I like everything about this truck. It's a pleasure to drive around town and on long trips. Very quiet interior when it comes to road noise, very smooth ride, tons of power, and all the features you'd expect in any car. Overall, it's a really nice truck, and the refinement is on the same level luxury cars were just a couple of years ago. If rattles are the worst thing about owning it so far, I'm happy.